In 2015, France was a somewhat troubled country. In January of that year, the office of the French magazine Charlie Hebdo was attacked by 2 gunmen, killing 12 people. More atrocities followed later that year, including coordinated attacks here in Paris 10 months later that killed 130. Now, as the trial is underway of 14 people accused of supporting the Charlie Hebdo attackers, we're asking, how has France changed, if at all? And we're getting the views of Yasser Louati. He is a French civil liberties activist in a one-on-one express. Yasser Louati, thank you for talking to us. Can I just start by asking you about the Charlie Hebdo trial that is underway? It's been 5 years in the preparation. What do you think this trial is going to achieve?
I think it will actually raise more questions than actually bring answers to the questions being asked in the Paris tribunal. First, France never recovered from the Charlie Hebdo attacks. Actually, we should say the January 2015 attacks, because we had Charlie Hebdo and the Jewish hyper-kosher and the police officer who got murdered in the street. And the people who are now on trial are secondary hands. They brought in logistical support, and the person who supplied the weapons to Ahmed Koulibaly is nowhere to be, just won't appear today anyway. On top of it, many of the decision makers are running loose somewhere between Syria and Iraq, and no questions are being raised on the failures of the French state, the intelligence community, and we somehow have this kind of, how can I call it, a symbolic trial to kind of do something about the tragic events and allow the country to move on. But the victims are still there, the dead people won't come back, and what has been accomplished by the French government and the media in the aftermath of the January 2015 attacks has actually polarized French society. I guess, the terrorists have achieved their ends.
The magazine has chosen to republish those cartoons that caused such offence many years ago. Why do you think Charlie Hebdo is publishing them, and why do you think they're doing it now?
The Macron presidency has been catastrophic for freedom of speech and freedom of the press. It is under his presidency first that many journalists have been raided by the police, like Mediapart, when they revealed the conspiracy of his own bodyguard to beat down demonstrators while being disguised as a police officer. I am myself, being prosecuted by the French apparatus because our organization revealed racism and police brutality in multiple towns and banlieues of France. So, of course, it's a tradition for French elites to pose to the international audience as the country of human rights and supporters of freedom of speech, but it's freedom of speech only for the powerful.
Let me ask you about French society. Do you think that anything has been learned from those years and that society here has moved forwards at all?
Actually, absolutely not. If you read the piece published by Daesh sometime in 2015 or late 2014 called The Destruction of the Grey Zone, which is a lengthy article in both English and Arabic, they state explicitly that those attacks are carried in the West to shed blood, but also to polarize French Western societies and turn Muslim minorities into oppressed minorities so they can use Islamophobia as a recruiting tool. France did see people join Daesh as a sign of trying to belong to something, but on top of it, we have seen both extreme sides of the political spectrum, be it Daesh or the far right and many of the what we call the identitarian left, use Islamophobia to kind of hold Muslims accountable for these attacks. And everybody forgets that Muslims are by far the #1 victims of international terrorism. Yet when the French government and the media react, they do make a difference. They discount Muslim lives and hold Muslims somehow responsible. As the former Prime Minister Manuel Valls said, the enemy within. The enemy within was actually used against Jews in the 1930s, and today is being used against Muslims to hold them accountable, scapegoat them, but to divert public scrutiny on the failures of the French state in terms of foreign policy, intelligence, and the way French society works as a whole.